Good morning everyone and welcome back to my channel. So firstly, I'd like to say thank you so much for everyone who watched my previous videos, for all the positive feedback, the comments, the likes, the subscriptions. I really am overwhelmed with your responses. So today I want to take you through my journey of polycystic ovaries and my fertility journey. So back in around 2016, 2017, that was when I got diagnosed with polycystic ovaries. So polycystic ovaries basically is a condition where there are hormonal imbalances in your body, and this affects your menstrual cycles. It affects your reproductive ability, so your ability to have kids is impaired if you're lucky enough to happen to conceive anyway, because that in itself is hard to happen when you have PCOS because of your hormonal imbalances, and then the little cysts that form on your ovaries. It also comes with other symptoms, such as excessive weight gain, especially on the abdominal area. Also unwanted hair growth, like I would get hair growing on my face, here on my neck, and it also is characterized by hair loss. So on my head, you can see my hair is like very thin. Also one of the characteristics that come with having PCOS. So as I was saying, back in 2017 I was diagnosed with this condition because my menstrual cycles were very irregular, and so I used to get a lot of pain in my ovaries and stuff like that. So I went through to the gynecologist, who then performed some scans, some blood tests, and then it was diagnosed that I do have polycystic ovaries. So having polycystic ovaries, of course, isn't easy, because as a female you want to have kids, and you may marry someone who wants kids, and then you may not be able to have kids. So that would also be a problem. But anyway, my fiance at that time was okay with the possibility of not having kids. I was upfront about the situation and told him exactly, what it is, and that my ability to have kids may be impaired. It may happen, but it may not happen. So I didn't want to set us up for disappointment should it not happen. And he was fine with that, luckily. So in 2019 we got married, and I didn't use any contraception or anything after marriage. So because I knew it is going to be hard to conceive anyway. So around January 2020 I started taking folic acid. I started taking because I heard that it helps with hair loss when you have PCOS, and it also helps prepare the womb for if you conceive. And I also wanted to balance out my hormones, so I took a supplement called Fertility PCOS. So it helps those with PCOS to regulate their hormones, so the negative symptoms that you get from PCOS can be controlled if your hormones are controlled. I also wanted to lose a little bit of weight, so here and there I did some intermittent fasting, whereby you can only have coffee, black coffee with no milk, no sugar, or green tea or water up until 12 in midday. Then after midday you're allowed to eat your meal. So here and there I did that. I was not diligent, I don't want to lie. So in May 2020, it was my birthday, And when my mom and family came over, they were like, you look different, something's different. You know how it is with older people, it's like they know before you know. They're like, something's different, you're glowing, there's a certain different glow that we don't see on a regular with you, you need to take a pregnancy test. And I was like, ah, come on, I know that's not true. Anyway, we went to do our toiletry shopping at Clicks that month. So as I was browsing the aisles, I came across the cheap pregnancy test. I think it was like 30 rands or something. So I decided to buy it, just to take it to prove everyone wrong and just put their minds at ease so that they can stop bugging me about this. Then took the test, expecting it to be negative, but it was positive. And it was so unbelievable because I know my problems and I've never had a regular menstrual cycle. There were indications that I don't ovulate, so how would it be possible to conceive a child? Anyway, to confirm, we did bloods, which confirmed that I was pregnant. Went through for a scan. It confirmed that I was already 8 weeks pregnant. And I didn't know because I had no symptoms apart from missed periods. But that to me was something that I always experience. So it was not a cause for concern or to think that I would be pregnant. Anyway, the pregnancy was fine right up until 28 weeks. The rest of my scans were fine. Baby was always okay, gaining within the weight range it was supposed to gain. Come to the 28 weeks checkup and scan. The doctor tells me, your baby measures small for 28 weeks. You have intrauterine growth restriction, which means the baby is not getting enough nutrients from your placenta. There's a problem with your placenta, so the baby isn't growing. And we might have to deliver him early if we monitor and see that he doesn't grow further. Then I was like, okay. Remember, this is my first time being pregnant. It was my first time knowing about a baby being born early, because I didn't know anything of that sort. I didn't know what it's like to have a premature baby. I didn't know the complications that came with it. So I decided like to just Google, do some research and see what happens. So the doctor said that I need to go through to hospital and have the steroid injections that will help speed up the development of baby's lungs should he be needed to be born early. So that's what I did. Got admitted in it was Ahmed Al Qadi Hospital. Took my steroid injections there. Then I was discharged. So during that week, tried to like eat as much protein as I can, eat as much food as I can, try to not stress, have a lot of bed rest. Did the best I can to ensure that baby gained some weight. Come to 30 weeks, go for a scan again. The doctor said, no, your baby still hasn't grown. Your baby is 1.3 kgs at 30 weeks. You know what we're going to do? We're going to deliver him at 32 weeks. I was like shocked because I know my baby is only going to be due on the 25th of December. That was his due date, Christmas Day. But they ended up doing a C-section for me on the 3rd of November 2020. So he was 8 weeks early. He was born at 32 weeks and I think it was 3 or 4 days. So it was the Friday before that Tuesday where he was delivered, and then the doctor says, you need to come in on Tuesday. We're going to do a C-section for you on Tuesday. You're scheduled for 6 p.m. but you need to be at the hospital at 10 a.m. So I was stressed out, everything. Went through to the shops, did some last minute shopping for hospital stuff to take along and just be prepared. Excuse me. So, come Tuesday, I met my family outside the hospital because obviously it was COVID time, so there were no visitors and stuff allowed. It was just going to be my husband that was going to be allowed to visit me while I was there. So my family met with me in the morning before I went into the hospital. They were there at the hospital to support me, say bye and stuff, all the best. Then I'm at reception of the hospital. It's almost 10 o'clock. We get a call from the theater. They're like, do you have a Shalia Rupnarayan there at reception? Then the receptionist is like, yes, she's in front of us filling in her admission forms and stuff. Then they're like, no, you need to rush. We have an opening in the theater and we need to do her Caesar now. And that was a time where I really started to panic because I know I'm going in at 6 p.m. and now it's like not even 10 o'clock. What is happening? And then it was so scary because this ended up being treated like a real emergency C-section now, because everyone was rushing to get me in, giving me this medicine to drink so that you don't throw up during the C-section, preparing me, taking off my jewelry, putting me in the hospital gown, all of those things. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, okay, I don't know why this is happening, but there must be some reason. I don't want to question. God knows best. Let me just go with it. That's what I did. So I go to theater, get prepared for theater, get into theater. My husband is there with me. And then they started with the epidural. That was so sore. I hated that. That was like the worst part of the Caesar. And so of course you're from waist down, you are numb once you take the epidural. And then I just compose myself, just prayed. And then the surgery was done. When the surgery was done, then the gynae and the assistant, they're like, okay, the baby is here, the baby is born. And then they're just holding him up, and now obviously it's not a normal birth, so now we don't know whether this child is going to need a ventilator, whether he's going to need oxygen, whether he's going to breathe when he comes out. So they're it was all a rush. I didn't get to have my baby being held as soon as he was born, or to get to see his face. They're like, okay, the baby's here, and then they just ran with the baby to the pediatrician, who then started doing checks on him. And I was so scared because when he came out, he wasn't crying. He just started crying a few minutes later. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I don't know if this child made it or what the story is. Only to find out that the child was not crying because he had the cord wrapped around his neck twice. And should he have been in any longer, it could have been detrimental to him because it was wrapped around his neck twice. So that was God's plan for me going into surgery earlier than I was expected to go. Because maybe if we had left it by 6 p.m., he could have been stillborn. So then, because my baby was born at 32 weeks, he's not a full-term baby. He was sent to the NICU. That's the neonatal intensive care unit, where they keep premature babies. Then I was in recovery, and my husband was called over to sign forms to admit baby into the NICU and to see where they're taking him to and stuff like that. And so I went into my ward, of course, and then baby was on the other side. And To me, all this was so unreal. There was so much happening. There was so much emotions where one should be happy and excited. It was so scary for me because my baby isn't with me and he's in the NICU. I'm in a different ward. And what broke me was to see all the other parents with their full-term babies. Their babies were with them in the wards, but my baby wasn't there. He was in the NICU away from me. And so grandparents were allowed to come to visit those babies. And my baby's grandparents were not allowed to visit him because he was intensive care. And it was COVID time. So it was only my husband who was allowed to come and visit me. And I couldn't see my family. Yeah. And then the next day, okay, so let's stay with the first day that he was born. So I needed to see for myself that he was okay in order for me to get some peace of mind. Normally after surgery, people are sleeping. You know, they're recovering. My mind was racing all over the place. My baby was born at 12:15, and come 5 o'clock, I still haven't slept. My mind is just racing all over the place, wondering what's happening to my baby. Then at 6, the nurses say to me, you know what, are you feeling okay? Are you able to like get up and maybe like have a bath? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I need to pick myself up because I need to go to my baby. I need to see him and know that he's okay. Then it's only then that I'll have peace of mind. So got up, I had a bath on my own, stood up on my own, got ready, had a bath, put on my clothes, all with no assistance. I don't know where my strength came from, but that strength just came. God knew I needed it. Walked to the NICU. It took me like so long to get there because obviously I've just been like cut less than 6 hours ago. So step by step, walked to the NICU. When I get there, they tell me, no, you can't come in. We're busy with your baby. Then I see like nurses and stuff around him, and that scared me more because like I thought, yo, something is happening. So went back to my ward. Then around 9 at night, then the pediatrician phoned my husband and said, your child was having a little bit of a struggle breathing, but he was breathing on his own when he was born. And that was like such a miracle because at 32 weeks, when a child comes out, they'll need a ventilator. But my child was breathing on his own, and yet he had the cord wrapped around his neck twice. He was able to breathe on his own when he was born. So I think the steroids that I took in the prior weeks actually helped him as well. Then the pediatrician was, okay, your baby had been struggling a little bit to breathe, so we have him on a nasal cannula oxygen. It's not the ventilator, but it's oxygen, so that's a positive thing. But otherwise, he's doing okay. And his weight was 1.6 when he was born, which ended up being the weight that a 32-week is supposed to be. Whereas we thought that he was going to be 1.3 when he was born because that is what the scan had said to us. But he was 1.6, 1.7 almost, because it was 1.680. So 20 grams more for 1.7. Come 2 o'clock that morning, I couldn't stay away any longer, and I was like, no, they must be settled down by now. Whatever they were doing, they must have been done with it by now. Let me try going to the NICU again. So I ended up walking to the NICU again, slowly, and this time, it was worse than the first time when I walked, because obviously now the epidural is completely worn off, and you're in this pain. And gosh, I had such a problem with my wound because I never rested, like, at all after I gave birth to my child, because he was in NICU. So I had to be up and down at the hospital every day. And because I never rested, a normal person's C-section will heal in 6 weeks. Mine took almost 6 months because it kept on opening and closing and opening and closing and oozing and oh. Anyway, took a walk to the NICU at 2 in the morning. Then that's where I got to see my son for the first time. And it was all mixed emotions because I couldn't believe, wow, I've made a human. It's my little human that's here. And then at the same time, it was like so sad to see him because he had oxygen on. He was hooked up to all these machines, and there was all these sirens, and all that sound till this day of all those machines still rings in my head. The smell of the NICU, the darkness of the NICU, the machines, that little plastic incubator. Oh, I hated that. To me, that looked like some kind of a coffin. Oh, just speaking about it takes me back to that time. The worst time. It was the worst time of my life. And so my child was there for 23 days before he got discharged. So in those 23 days, he needed to gain weight. He needed to learn to bottle feed. So obviously his suck and swallow reflexes were weak because he was a 32-weeker, and kids only start to get that reflex properly at 36 weeks. And he needed to gain weight. Then they also found another problem with him. They found that he had a little VSD in his heart. A VSD is a little hole in his heart. So apparently when the pediatrician was examining him in the days when he was there, he heard like this whoosh sound. So he got the heart doctor to come and check it out. And then that's when he checked it out, and he was like, no, your son has a little hole in his heart. And oh, it was just setback after setback. But he was like, no, we're going to monitor it. Hopefully it's going to be okay. And it's just going to close up. Then I'm like, being the person that I am, I'll always think of the worst case scenario. I'm like, okay, and if it doesn't close, what happens? Then they're like, no, then your son has to have open heart surgery. Oh.